Lesbian detectives, unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Right now, lesbian detective, lesbian detective. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the lesbian detectives.
This is Lesbian Detectives. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we are here talking about missing and unsolved murders.
We are discussing cases that you have forgotten about or never even heard of.
So sit back, relax, and let's start this podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode on a new week. I'm very excited for this episode. I'm sorry, guys. So excited. This episode, I've been watching it for so long, and they got the person, but something happened. And I'm like, what in the world? So yeah, you guys know I love me a good Jane Doe and a good John Doe. So I'm so excited for this episode. My wife finally finished her tattoo, guys. Thank you. I'm tired. I'm over it. I'm like, thank you. This tattoo is over with. But did I tell her, like, hey, you do the other arm? Because, like, your other arm look blank and empty now. So go ahead, get that money. And I did not know how much her tattoo was. Like, she kind of kept that a secret to me. Like, you told me part of it. But when you said the final amount, I said, what in the world?
I told you the price of the session, and I told you the amount of sessions.
Well, the last section you didn't supposed to do. Because you're like, I'm only going to do 2. Then he talked you into 3. And then now he talked you into 4. So it's like...
No, but the other one, I just got to pay the supplies.
Yeah, but you still have to pay. It's like, what, 100 something?
100.
So it's still money that you have to pay for. Well, wife, I hope you guys see her tattoo fully done one day. I don't know when it's going to be done, but it's done.
I literally just took off the wrap, so it's still real, icky, but I think next week it should be, it's not going to be fully healed, but it'll be a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. And then you go on in a couple weeks to get it.
In a month
to get it more details.
The final detail.
So by our vacation, your tattoo should be done. Take 18 months, but it should be done by then. Now, guys, let's say my favorite line. Now, let's get into the episode. In 1976, a young pregnant woman disappeared, but for decades, no one knew what happened to her. Her family believed she had just walked away and started a new life. They had no idea that investigators in another state were trying to identify a woman whose remains had been found abandoned near a river. The victim had no name. There were no missing person report that immediately connected to her, and no one came forward who knew who she was. For more than 40 years, investigators worked to answer the same question: who was this young woman? Where did she come from? And who was responsible for killing her and leaving her behind? The case became one of the longest-running unidentified homicide investigation in the state. Detectives followed leads and used every piece of evidence they had, but the victim's identity remained a mystery. Then, decades later, a new type of technology changed everything. DNA genealogy finally revealed who this young woman was and connected investigators to a person they believed was responsible for her death. But even after an arrest was made, the case was far from over, because after 44 years of searching for answers, the victim finally had her name back but her family was still waiting for justice. This is the story of a woman only known as Beth Doe. On December 20th, a teenage boy was near Interstate 40 when he noticed 3 suitcases below the bridge. The luggage seemed unusual, and after getting closer, he realized there was something inside that needed to be reported. Authorities were contacted, and when investigators arrived, they discovered what the suitcase contained: human remains. Inside the luggage were the remains of a young woman and an unborn baby. From the beginning, investigators knew they were dealing with a violent crime, but they had very little information about the victim. She appeared to be a young teenager or a young adult, and one of the first things detectives discovered was that she had been pregnant. Investigators examined the remains. They determined that the woman was in her final stage of pregnancy. The baby she was carrying was a girl who was estimated to be around 9 months along. She was close to being born, meaning the victim had likely been preparing to become a mother before her life was taken. The discovery of the unborn child added another heartbreaking part to the investigation. Detectives were not only trying to identify the woman whose life was taken, but they were also trying to understand what happened to her baby. The child had never been given the opportunity to live, and investigators now had 2 victims they needed to identify. The medical examiner revealed that the woman had suffered a violent death. Investigators determined that she had been sexually assaulted and strangled. They also found that she had been shot in the neck after her death. After she was killed, her body had been dismembered using what appeared to be a tool. Her baby girl was stillborn. Her remains, along with those of her unborn daughter, were placed inside 3 suitcases. Investigators believe the person responsible had attempted to hide the crime by throwing the luggage from the Interstate 80 bridge, which was around 300 feet above the area where the suitcases were discovered. The person responsible likely hoped the river would carry the evidence away, and the victims would never be found. However, the plan did not work. Instead of landing in the water, 2 other suitcases landed in the woods, and another ended up near the riverbank. The impact caused the luggage to open, leading to the discovery that the investigators would begin. As detectives processed the scene, they collected every piece of evidence they could find. The suitcases themselves became important clues. 2 were striped red, blue, and white, while the third one was tanned with plaid design. Investigators noticed the handle had been removed and that black spray paint had been applied to part of the outside, possibly in an attempt to disguise the luggage. Inside the suitcase, police found items that had been used during the disposal of the remains, including scraws, dry packing foam, a bedspread, and sections of the New York Sunday News dated September 26, 1976. The autopsy provided investigators with more information about the young woman. She was examined to be between 4 feet 11 inches and 5 feet 4 inches tall, 140 to 150 pounds. She had dark brown shoulder-length hair and blood type O. Investigators also documented several identified features, including dental work, a fractured front tooth, 2 facial moles, and a scar above one of her heels. But even with all these details, detectives were still missing the one piece of information they needed most: her identity. They did not know her name, where she was from, who her family was, or whether anyone was searching for her. They knew that this young woman had been someone's daughter, and that she was carrying a baby girl who never got the chance to be born. But they had no way to find the people who loved her. The case had started with 3 suitcases near a river, and now investigators were left with one question that will follow them for decades. Who was this young woman? Because until they knew her name, finding her killer would be impossible. Normally, when police are investigating a murder, Learning the victim identity is the first major step. A name gives investigators a place to start. It allows them to speak with family members, friends, and anyone who may have known the victim. It helps them understand her life, her relationship, and what may have led to her death. But in this case, detectives had none of that information. They knew that this young woman who had been close to giving birth, they knew she had a baby girl who was stillborn. They knew someone had killed her and tried to hide her remains, but they did not know where she had lived, who she had been with before her death, or whether anyone was searching for her. Investigators began by looking at every possible clue they had. They examined her fingerprints, dental records. In the 1970s, dental records was one useful tool available for identifying unknown remains, so detectives carefully documented the condition of her teeth and any previous dental work she had received. They also compared her information with missing person report from Pennsylvania and surrounding states. Detectives searched for young women who had disappeared around the same time who matched her description, but every possible lead led the same way. No match. The investigators also focused on the items found with the remains. Detectives hoped the suitcase, the bedspread, or the newspaper found inside could connect the crime to a person or a location. They examined the detail carefully, hoping one small piece of evidence would provide the breakthrough they needed. But the clues did not reveal who she was. Investigators eventually released information about the case to the public, hoping someone would recognize the victim. A sketch was created showing what she may have looked like, and details about her appearance were shared in hopes that someone would come forward. They described a young woman with dark brown hair, a scar near her heel, dental work, and other identified features. But no one came forward to say they knew her. The woman had been found, but her story remains incomplete because investigators still did not know her name. In 1983, several years after her discovery, the young woman was buried. She was laid to rest without her real identity even being known. The marker at her grave did not carry the name she was born with. It carried the name investigators had given her, Beth Doe. But even after she was buried, the investigation did not end. Detectives continued to revisit the case as new technology became available. They knew that science was changing and that evidence that could not provide answers in the 1976 might be able to help decades later. In 2007, investigators took another look at the case, exhumed Beth Doe remains so additional testing would be completed. They also worked with experts to create a new facial reconstruction, hoping a more accurate image of the victim would finally lead someone to recognize her. The updated reconstruction was released to the public, and once again, investigators asked for help. Someone somewhere had to know who she was. Someone had to remember a young girl who disappeared in 1976. Someone had to be missing her. But once again, the case remained unsolved. For more than 40 years, the woman found near the river remained a mystery. Investigators had evidence. They had theories. They had a case file that continued to grow. But they still did not have one thing that could change everything. And without a name, Beth Doe remained one of the most unidentified victims waiting for someone to finally discover the truth about who she was. For decades, investigators continued searching for answers in the case of Beth Doe. Even though years had passed since she was found, detectives never considered the case closed. They knew that somewhere there was information that could finally reveal who she was. Over the years, investigators looked into missing person cases for different states, hoping to find a connection. They compared description, reviewed reports, followed tips from people who believed they may know who she was. But every possible lead had the same outcome. It wasn't her. And one of the biggest challenges to identify Beth Doe was the time period. She disappeared in 1976, long before the internet, social media, and advanced DNA database that investigators have access to today. Information was not as easy to share between agencies, and many missing person cases from that era remains unsolved. Then in 2019, investigators received a possible lead to be different from the others. Police were contacted about a missing young woman named Madeline Maggie Cruz. There were similarities between Maggie's disappearance and the circumstance surrounding Beth Doe. Maggie had disappeared as a teenager, and investigators believe some details of her story matched what they knew about the unidentified victim. Maggie had reportedly left her foster home in 1974. When she was 16 years old, she later contacted a friend in 1976 and mentioned that she was pregnant. After that, she disappeared, and no one knew what had happened to her.
Because of the similarities, investigators began looking into whether Maggie Cruz could be Beth Doe. For a short time, this appeared to be the answer investigators had been searching for. The circumstances seemed to fit. She was a young woman who disappeared. She had been pregnant. The timeline appeared possible, but investigators needed proof. After further investigation, police discovered that Maggie Cruz was not the unidentified woman found in Pennsylvania. She was alive. The lead that had seemed so promising turned out not to be connected to the case. Once again, investigators were back where they started. Beth Doe still had no name. But even though this lead did not solve the case, it showed something important. Investigators were still actively searching, and they were still willing to examine every possibility. A new type of technology would change the direction of the investigation, a technology that did not exist when Beth Doe was first discovered. After more than 40 years, the case of Beth Doe remained unsolved. Investigators had spent decades trying to identify her, but every traditional method had failed. They had created sketches, reviewed missing person reports, followed tips, and investigated possible matches, but they still did not know the name of the young woman found near the Lay River. Then a new tool changed the investigation. DNA genealogy had started transforming the way law enforcement looked at unidentified remains in cold cases. Instead of only comparing DNA to criminal databases, investigators could use genetic information to search for possible relatives through genealogy databases. For Beth Doe's case, this created a new opportunity that investigators did not have back in 1976. A DNA profile was developed from the remains and uploaded for analysis. Investigators hoped that even if they could not find a direct match, they might find relatives connected to the victim's family line. At first, they were looking for small connections that could eventually lead them to a name. That is how many DNA genealogy cases are solved. Investigators may not immediately find the victim, but they can find relatives, build family trees, and work backwards who the unidentified person was. In this case, the DNA results eventually pointed investigators towards a family connection. The match led them to a man named Evelyn Colon, Jr. At first, he had no idea why investigators were interested in his DNA. He was simply someone who had submitted genetic information while trying to learn more about his own family history. But investigators discovered that his DNA connected him to the unidentified woman who had been known for decades as Beth Doe. Through the family connection, detectives were able to begin piecing together her identity. They discovered that Beth Doe was actually a teenager from Jersey City, New Jersey, who had disappeared in 1976. Her name was Evelyn Colon. The announcement came on March 31st, 2021, almost 45 years after her remains were found along the Lay River. For the first time since 1976, the unidentified victim had finally had her name back. The news was emotional for investigators and for the family members who had spent years believing they would never know what happened to her. Evelyn's relatives had always wondered about her disappearance. They believed she had left New Jersey and started a new life, but they never knew the truth. Her family members explained that for years they searched for her and hoped she was still alive. They believed one day she might contact them or that they might finally find her. Instead, after more than 4 decades, they learned that the young woman they had been searching for had been found years later. She had just been waiting for someone to discover who she was. But identifying Evelyn was only the beginning of the investigation. Once detectives knew her name, they could finally start looking into her life, her final days, and the people who were around her before she disappeared. And one person quickly became the focus of the investigation: the man who had last been seen with Evelyn before she vanished, her former boyfriend. After investigators finally identified Beth Doe as Evelyn Colon, the case changed completely. For more than 4 decades, detectives had been trying to figure out who this young woman was. They had spent years looking at her remains, searching through missing persons reports, and hoping someone would recognize her. Now, for the first time, they had a name. But identifying Evelyn was only the beginning. Investigators now had the chance to learn about the person behind the case. They could look into her childhood, her family, her relationships, and what her life was like before she disappeared. Evelyn Colon was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey. She was one of several children in her family and was described by relatives as a typical teenager growing up in the 1970s. In 1976, Evelyn was only 15 years old when her life began to change. She became pregnant by her boyfriend, Luis Sierra, who was 19 years old at the time. According to Evelyn's family, the two lived near each other in Jersey City, and their relationship developed while they were teenagers. After learning Evelyn was pregnant, the couple moved into an apartment together. Her family later explained that during that time period, young couples often made decisions like this after learning they were expecting a child. Evelyn's family believed she and Louise were preparing to start a life together and welcomed the idea that she would have support as she became a mother. Even after moving out, Evelyn stayed in contact with her family. Her mother continued checking on her and making sure she was okay. According to relatives, Evelyn would call and talk with her family, and there was no reason for them to believe something was wrong. Then one day, everything changed. Evelyn contacted her mother and asked her to bring her some soup. Her mother went to the apartment, expecting to see her daughter and Louise, but when she arrived, no one answered the door. She waited and tried to figure out what had happened. When she spoke with people in the neighborhood, she was told that Evelyn and Louise had apparently moved away. At the time, this was confusing, but the family did not know what else to believe. Then in January of 1977, Evelyn's family received a letter from Louise. The letter claimed that Evelyn was doing okay and she had given birth. It also suggested that Evelyn did not want contact with her family anymore and would reach out if she needed anything. The family had no reason to believe the letter was not real, so they accepted the explanation. They believed Evelyn had chosen to leave and start a new life. For years, this was the story her family carried with them. They believed Evelyn was somewhere out there, possibly raising her child and living the life she had chosen. Her relatives continued hoping they would hear from her again. They searched for information over the years, especially as technology changed and as the internet made it easier to look for missing people. But they never found her. What they did not know was that Evelyn had never started a new life. The baby mentioned in the letter was not a child who survived. The young woman her family thought had walked away had actually been found years earlier in Pennsylvania, still unidentified. After investigators discovered Evelyn's identity in 2021, they began looking closer at the events surrounding her disappearance. They needed to answer the question that had remained unanswered since 1976. What happened to Evelyn Colon? And as detectives reviewed the evidence, their attention turned towards the person who was last known to be with her, Luis Sierra. Detectives also began looking more closely at Evelyn and Luis's relationship. According to family members, the relationship was not always healthy. Relatives described Luis as controlling and said Evelyn had expressed concerns about him. They told investigators that Evelyn had made comments suggesting that if something ever happened to her, Luis would be responsible. After decades without answers, investigators now had a person who was connected to Evelyn, knew her final whereabouts, and had a reason to be questioned, but detectives still needed evidence. One major piece of evidence came from DNA testing. During the investigation, authorities were able to confirm that Luis Sierra was the biological father of the unborn baby found in Evelyn's remains. This connection was important because it linked him directly to Evelyn and the circumstance surrounding her disappearance. Investigators also believed Evelyn was last seen alive with Luis in their Jersey City apartment before she vanished. After Evelyn disappeared, Luis eventually left New Jersey and moved on with his life. Decades later, investigators located him living in Ozone Park, Queens, New York, where he was working as a bus driver. The case that had remained unsolved since 1976 was finally moving forward. On March 31st, 2021, the same day, authorities announced that Beth Doe had been identified as Evelyn Colon. Luis Anthony Sierra was arrested at his home in New York. He was 63 years old at the time. Sierra was charged with criminal homicide in connection with Evelyn's death and was taken into custody while authorities worked through the legal process. But even though an arrest had been made, the case was not over. The evidence still had to go through the court system, and a major legal issue would eventually threaten the prosecution. The question was no longer just who killed Evelyn. The question became whether the case could actually move forward in court. The arrest was the result of years of investigation combined with modern DNA technology and old-fashioned detective work. Authorities believed Evelyn had been killed in New Jersey before her remains were transported to Pennsylvania. They also questioned the letter that had been sent to Evelyn's family after her disappearance. For years, Evelyn's relatives believed the letter was proof that she had left and started a new life. The letter claimed Evelyn was okay and suggested she did not want contact with her family. But investigators later believed the letter was part of an attempt to make Evelyn's family believe she was still alive. After Sierra's arrest, he was brought to Pennsylvania to face the charges filed against him. He was charged with criminal homicide and remained in custody while the case moved through the court system. For Evelyn's family, the arrest represented a moment they had waited decades for. They finally knew what happened to her. They finally knew that she had not simply walked away, and they finally had someone accused of taking her life. But the case would soon face a major obstacle. Although Evelyn's remains were discovered in Pennsylvania, investigators believed she had actually been murdered in New Jersey. This created a complicated legal question. Which state had the authority to prosecute the case? The location where a body is found does not always determine where a crime occurred. Prosecutors must prove that the court handling the case has jurisdiction, meaning the legal authority to charge someone for that crime. As the defense examined the case, the questions began to focus on where Evelyn had actually died. Evidence suggested that Evelyn was killed in Jersey City, New Jersey, and that her remains were later transported across state lines and abandoned in Pennsylvania. This became a serious problem for Pennsylvania prosecutors. The family had spent decades waiting for justice, but now that the case faced a legal battle that had nothing to do with whether Evelyn had been murdered, instead it focused on where that murder happened. In 2025, a Carbon County judge dismissed the charges against Luis because Pennsylvania prosecutors could not establish that the murder occurred within their jurisdiction. The dismissal did not mean investigators believed Evelyn's death was not a crime. It did not erase the evidence gathered over decades, and it did not change the fact that Evelyn and her unborn daughter had been found after being killed. It was a decision based on where the crime could legally be prosecuted. After more than 40 years of searching, Evelyn finally had her identity back. A suspect had been identified, but the question of whether anyone would ever be held legally responsible for her death remained unanswered. The case that began with 3 suitcases besides a Pennsylvania river had now returned to where investigators believed it started, New Jersey. And the search for justice for Evelyn was not over yet. Before we end this case, let's take a moment to remember the victims. For more than 44 years, the world knew her by only 2 words, Beth Doe. She wasn't just another cold case or another unidentified victim. She was a 15-year-old girl. Before she had the chance to experience it, she should have been preparing to welcome her first child into the world, thinking about becoming a mother and looking forward to the next chapter in life. Instead, her life ended in an act of an unimaginable violence. For decades, her family believed she had left home to start over. They waited for a phone call, a letter, or even a surprise visit. They held on to hope that one day she would walk back through that door. That day never came. By the time investigators finally identified her in 2021 through DNA genealogy, both of her parents had already passed away without ever learning what had happened to their daughter. Her mother spent years searching for her and never stopped asking the same question. Where is Evelyn? Sadly, she died before she ever received the answer. We should also remember Evelyn's unborn daughter. She was just days away from being born. Investigators determined she was a baby girl who was nearly full term. She never had a chance to take her first breath, celebrate a birthday, or live the life her mother had dreamed for her. Her story began and ended with the tragedy that took her mother's life. Today, Evelyn and her daughter are buried together, finally unidentified and no longer forgotten. Although a suspect was arrested decades later, the murder case remains without a final legal resolution after the charges were dismissed because of jurisdictional issues. This means the question of who will ultimately be held accountable is still unanswered. But one thing did change. She is no longer just Beth Doe. She is Evelyn Colon, a daughter, a sister, a niece, and a young mother whose story deserves to be remembered. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If this case has touched you, please share Evelyn's story. Even though her identity has been restored, her family is still waiting for the justice they have been seeking for nearly half a century. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is to make sure the victims are never forgotten. This is the case of Beth Doe, aka Evelyn Colon. Now let's get into some theories.
Theories.
Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Let's begin detectives. What type of thoughts you thinking? What theories running through your mind? I'm thinking all types of suspicion. Uncover the truth, what we can find. Witness say they saw somebody creeping out the back door. What you think they did it for? That's so crazy, I'm not sure. They found a car, where could she be? Here go another puzzle piece. Researching through your history. It's plenty unsolved mysteries. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories, yeah. Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Let's begin detectives.
You or me?
Good.
So we know who did it. It's Luis. I'm not saying his last name because that's my name. I just can't even think of somebody having my name doing something that bad. It's just sad because what she went through. And I already can picture what happened that night. He probably got jealous because her family said he has a control issue. He was always jealous and stuff like that. So you can see that he probably like, oh, that's not my baby. You cheating on me. I don't know who baby. You know, he got a little mad at her. And then he essayed her and strangled her and then shot her. I'm like, dang. And then you cut up her body. And then the crazy thing about it, that was your baby inside of her. So you killed your baby. That baby was stillborn. So that baby, all them blunts and all that shooting, all that strangling and all them hits, that baby felt it. And that baby died in her mother's womb. And that's the most crazy thing about it because you killed your child. And then to me, it's like if he felt any regrets when the police arrested him, he could have said, yeah, that was me. But he doesn't feel any regrets. He probably like, yeah, I did. Like he probably feel like, yeah, like what's the point? I did. Like I killed her and I killed my child. Like he doesn't give a, he probably still doesn't even think that's his kid. Like even if it's like, hey, the DNA match, that's your daughter. He probably still doesn't even think that. And for him to write the letter to her mom and family and say, hey, like, I'm not, like, I don't want you in my life no more. I feel like they got the hurt as a mom because her mom was there through the whole pregnancy. She called and checked in on her daughter and for her daughter just to go missing. She like, I feel like her mama probably questioned it. Like, as a mom, you're like, no, like, I know my daughter. Like, she wouldn't just get up and leave like that. Like, I know something happened. Like her mama had that gut feeling. Like, every mom has a gut feeling when their child is in danger. Like, we don't know what's that feeling, but we know, like, hey, my child is not okay. I don't know what's going on, but I have that feeling. And a lot of moms out there can say it. So I feel so sorry for the mom and the family. But then it's like, when we going to recharge him? Okay, like Pennsylvania, forget you. New Jersey, when are you going to go charge him? Like, it's time. Like, I don't understand, like, why we haven't charged him. And, like, I do give the police applause because they work hard on this case. They did not give up on her for all their hard work to get this far, and you can't even charge him. I know and I know, like, the DA probably like, well, we need more evidence. We need more of this. They're like, dang, like, we've been 44 years working on this case. We got the name, we got the guy. Like, you do something now. It's just, Luis, you sick. Like, he lived his whole life. He like 63, 64, probably 64, 65 now. He lived his whole life. I don't know how his life was, but Evelyn died at just 15 years old. Her baby didn't even take a breath. So it's like, he's sick to me. I don't know. Like, people like that is just, oh, it hurts me to my bones.
I feel a little different. I'm upset because she was 15 and he was 19. The parents allowed this relationship to be when it shouldn't have been, in my opinion. Second, she had literally told them, Evelyn had literally told her parents, if something ever happens to me, it's because Luis did it, right? So if you already know that this man is no good for her,
Mm-hmm.
how do you just simply allow Evelyn to be there? Why don't you try and rescue her? I think that was her way of like asking for help, but they didn't. And then for her parents to just accept the fact that she's going to write them a letter saying that she doesn't want them in their life. Like, they never fought for her. They never try to look for her. Like, they just accepted what she had said in a letter when, they were involved during her pregnancy. So to me, it's like, yes, Luis is a monster, but I feel like her parents failed her. They allowed her to be with him. Evelyn had told them that, if something happened to her, it was going to be Luis's fault. It was most likely Luis. And they still didn't help her. I understand that this was a different time. It was 1976, which, like, what, 60 years ago? No, 50. 50 years ago. And I don't know. To me, it's like they could have done more. I don't know. And then Evelyn, it's very important to pick who you are with, who you have kids with, most importantly. She is 15. I mean, 15, you're not fully developed. You don't really think rationally like you should. But if she knew that her life was in danger with Luis, you need to speak up. You need to do something. You can't just, I don't know. It's just the amount of effort that they placed, that the family and Evelyn placed in order to save her was not there. And I mean, you can't really blame the monster. You can't really blame Luis. He's gonna do what he feels is best for him. And a monster is gonna act like a monster. He's not gonna have any remorse. He got away with all of this. Why would he give up now? Right? So I don't know. This story to me it makes me so mad. Yes, it's unfortunate, but I feel like it was also avoidable. They could have done a lot to avoid this, but even when the worst happened, like, there was no fight.
Mhm.
And that just upsets me because, like, I don't know, God forbid, right? Something happens to mine. Like, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to figure out what the hell happened. So it just makes me mad.
But also, I'm going to have to say this. You have to think about what time period that was in. Women back there, they didn't really have any rights. They're all supposed to be a homemaker. A girl 15 getting pregnant and getting married, that was a normal. DV back then, that didn't exist of. Like your husband slapping you around, beating you, that was a normal thing. A lot of women went through that and they couldn't do nothing about it. It took so many years for women to say, like, yeah, I got beat by my husband, but that was normal. Everybody got beat by their husband. We didn't have any rights back then. And then it's like even when you can think about it, even when like your husband, you say no to your husband and he SA you, they don't even see that as rape back then. Still to this day, people don't see like, hey, if you in a relationship, if we are together and you don't want to have sex and I still have sex with you, a lot of people believe that that's okay. Like that's not rape. So like you got to think about that time period. Like our time period, we think very different. We think if you are in an abusive relationship and you see the signs, get out now. Back then, they're probably normal to them. I'm just saying, like, you have to think about the time period. And yes, I do believe that the family, full of story, if they really did look for her. You know, it did, when they got technology came about, they started looking for her online. But they did not look as much as we would have looked. But I agree with you on that one. I would have looked a little harder as a mom. Like, I know my child. But we don't know what the mom felt in that moment. Like, we don't know, like, she probably knew something happened. Like,
She was still asking where Evelyn was, but who was she asking?
mm-hmm.
Just random people? Like, no, she has to ask the right questions to the right people.
But that was you would do, though. Different people do different things, though.
If she was last seen with Luis, I would have asked Luis.
Luis left. But they did know the family, though.
They need to track. Yeah, they could have done more. Like, to me, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter what time period thing like this happened. At the end of the day, that's somebody's daughter. And as a mother, as a parent, your job is to protect them.
Mhm.
She wasn't even 18 years old. I don't know. It's just, I can't.
Well, I think we should end this case because me and my wife, we're getting a little heated. We believe different things, but that's how it is, telling your theories. A lot of folks not going to agree with you. But guys, please tell me, what do you think about this case? I'd love to hear your theories. So go in the comments and tell me, what do you think? The easy way to support us is just liking our episode and telling your friends about it and sending it to the next person, send it to the next person. This is Lesbian Tetras. Don't forget, everybody's a suspect.
So proven innocent.
Bye. See you next time.
Lesbian detective. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Right now. Lesbian detective. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the Lesbian Detectives.